changers came into Greece in 594 AD, but they were thrown out. People threw them out and said, we don't like your banking practices. You're sopping up all the money and the goods of the country. Get out. It had nothing to do with religion or anything else. It was about their banking practices. And in Turkey in 331 AD, the money changers were stopped again, and there were no depressions. If you violated honest money, your hands were cut off. That's how people felt about this practice. It is murder. It may be murder at a distance, but it still results in death for everybody, okay? So they didn't want it, okay? In the Middle Ages, if you indulged in this kind of interest, you couldn't be buried in sacred ground. You could not. If you made money on interest, you could not be buried in a church graveyard, okay? It's always been the worst thing you can do to humanity. But in the end, this was the deal. The churches don't talk about it anymore. I don't care which church it is, how humane, how new agey. They don't discuss the biggest crime against humanity. You know why? Because the deal was, if you don't discuss it, you don't pay taxes. That was the deal made with all the churches. Doesn't matter which one. You shut up about this crime and we won't tax you. So they folded, okay? Because money, money, money. Always look for the money, okay? That's what was done. Now, to get on to this last bit, which I said you're going to be, I think you're going to be upset, or you just might say what Farley Mowat said just before he died, if you know who Farley Mowat was. He said, human beings aren't worth the powder it takes to blow them up. So he was really fed up, okay? And George Carlin, before he died, he said, I've given up on the human race. Not enough guts to stuff an ant's ass, okay? So that's what he said. So now let's get on to this even more horrifying robbery. And that kind of robbery always involves people dying. So, I'm going to ask you a question now. Okay? How many people are fed up of hearing what we can't afford, what we can't do, what more has been cut from our health care, what more has been cut from education, whatever? Nobody can do anything about it. This voting thing coming up, please. Nobody has said anything important. Nobody has said, let us start lending, borrowing from our own Bank of Canada that doesn't charge us interest. Let's go back to the Bank of Canada. Not one politician has suggested it. They're all too scared. Okay? They're all dealing with trivia, effects, not the cause. All right? So it gets pretty disgusting when you have to hear what's being cut. Now, okay. Do you know why it's getting worse and worse and everything's getting more and more cut? Okay. This is the lie that they've been telling us since 1946. In 1946, the government, not just ours, but I know in North America, decided that they weren't going to tell us about their secret surpluses. And they have surpluses in the billions. This government, the American government, every city, town, county has surpluses of money that are so far beyond what you could imagine. They could do the budget 100 times over. We don't even have to pay a tax. Our government is rolling in money. So I'm asking you, have you ever heard of something called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports? Anyone here? All right. The corporations get that report. All the corporations, all the media, all the big universities, whatever, they get this report. You will never see it. Now, this man who was a commodities trader, he went on the net and told people about this in the early 90s, and of course, Google had him taken off. However, he is back on there. I interviewed him. And in 1946, this is what they decided. This is how they make up their rules. I love it. They said, okay, the budget that we have to meet every year in every city, every town, federal, all these budgets only govern annual expenses. Get it? Annual expenses. Expenses. And so when they say, we haven't got enough in the budget, so you're going to have to be taxed, more taxes this year. But all their surpluses, I'm talking in the billions here now, surpluses are never mentioned in the budget. No. Our governments have so much money that they never have to tax us. But they do, because they have made the budget only down to annual expenses. So if they don't get enough for the annual expenses, we have to pay more tax. Now, that's why you've got the 6 pages, okay? So in 1946, they decided that none of these budgets for any of the towns, counties, cities, federal government have to disclose the money that the government made. No. They don't. That has nothing to do with the budget, according to them. Even if we don't have enough in the budget and we have to cut things, like kids have to bring their own crayons to school and all this crap. No, there's billions out here that they could take from, and we wouldn't even have to pay a tax, okay? That's how they have rigged it since 1946. That all the money the governments make, and that's in the billions, I'm talking here, all the figures are down there. The billions do not ever have to be disclosed to us. And how do the governments make this huge surplus, okay? All governments, whether they're federal, local, city, whatever, all governments have invested in all the corporate poisons that are killing us. Huge investments. They're making billions. And they're not disclosing any of it to us. They keep telling us they're broke. We're broke. You people will have to cut down on that and you'll be taxed more. But every year, every corporate CEO, every government officer, the head of every church organization, all of them get this report. They get it to read, and it tells them exactly how many billions, trillions in some cases, that they have made. The comprehensive, write this down, and see if you can get a copy of any of these. See, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports. And Mr. Burien, Walter Burien, B-U-R-I-E-N, he was a commodities trader, and he got his hand on this report by mistake. In the 90s, when he read it, he said, I almost keeled over. He didn't even know that governments are involved in making billions with corporations. And it has nothing to do whether they're good for us, bad for us. They are making billions on the side. And that's why politicians will spend millions on a campaign to get into some job that might only pay them $100,000 a year. But they want the job so that they can get in on this. Yes. So, when we talk about the special ed planet, some people call it the slave planet, I call it the special ed planet, we have been, it's not that we're stupid, it's that we don't get any information. The media is not going to tell us, they're in on it. In on the billions of investments. And they don't care if it's the tar sands or some other killer, some other biochemical crap. They're making billions. And at the same time telling us, oh, you can't afford this, you can't afford that. Cicero was right. They're excreted. Politicians are excreted. And churches sold us out a long time ago, okay? So let me get back to what else comes out of this. So our tax money, they have taken our tax money and invested it in corporations, whether they're harming us or not. They're making billions, and they don't allow any of it to come in and help the budget. None of it. So, the government, think about Xerox and all those big companies. The government owns over half the stock market. No matter what they produce. The government owns half the stock market. Why hasn't the Fed ever been audited? How many billions or trillions do you think they make on the taxes and interest they collect? They're not letting us know. These people are making billions, okay? In fact, the global government investments come to over $30 trillion. Governments with elected politicians. And they're still telling us they're making cuts and more cuts. All right. In 1998, the Fed had a $435 billion surplus. What do you think they're making now? So now they've developed a third set of books. When we found out about their second set of books about all the surpluses in the 90s, they're now developing a third set of books that don't tell us all the surpluses they're making. So it goes from book 1, book 2, now they're on book 3. Okay? They don't tell us what they make on. Now just get some of these things they make billions on. Oil and gas, turnpikes, regulatory taxes, port authority taxes. What are they doing with it? No, I'm going to quote him. I'm going to quote this guy. I hope he's not dead yet. The money from the secret surplus goes into controlling the population. Where do you think they're getting the money for all the cameras? For the police to be trained militarily, they're telling us in the budget, oops, can't even afford school supplies. So what are they doing with all those billions? How do you think they can afford all the cameras and the police outfits and all this that's going on, okay? Here he says it. They're doing what they have to do about pot control, anti-protesting, because pot competes with the big pharma, and now they want to get in on it themselves. Let me give you some advice. Never buy pot from the government. Go to where you've been buying it, medical, whatever. Do not ever buy pot from the government. You won't know what's in it. You could be having GMO pot. Come on. Don't do it, okay? I'm warning you. Okay, it's all about control. So the budget is only for, now here's the sample. The state of Texas had a $430 billion surplus. They announced a $6 billion surplus instead and gave back $2 billion to the state because the budget is only to pay for services, and they can cut services anytime they want. But the billions they make goes back into those corporations, it goes back into businesses they run and start up, and it goes back into all the police state stuff for controlling you, okay? So he says right here, it allows the state and federal government to take your taxes, invest in the market, start their own businesses, etc. And the media is in on it, okay? They put all the losses on the budget, never tell you what they collect from oil and gas revenue, turnpike sales, taxes, Port Authority. Okay. So, and the bot media goes along with them. It agrees. It says the same thing. Okay? That's what's happening. So now you have to decide, what is it you're going to do? Are you going to make this known that you know about this? Now he did, and I said now they're on a third book, because the second book that used to tell all the corporations, wow, look at the money you all made, now they're pulling back on that. They're lying about that. So now there's a third book that tells them what they really made, okay? So they're paying, with all the surpluses, they're paying for all the new prisons, all the new mental health departments like CAMH and all that garbage, okay? I did a stint down at the mental hospital. That's another total lecture. I won't go into that now. But CAMH doesn't mean anything to me. So the hidden surpluses pay for false flag attacks like 9/11. Yes, they do. That's why they're keeping all the surpluses, okay? That's what they pay for, all right? And so he says here, since this surplus has been exposed, the government is now showing less profits by not showing all the investments. So they just keep on lying. As soon as they're found out one lie, they invent another lie very quickly, okay? So, for instance, this is just a small example. Our hydro actually made $600 million every year, over and above what it spent. That went to us. Maurice Strong came in here, reorganized the hydro, fired all the technicians, then it was limping along, and that was an excuse to privatize. He's the same idiot who restructured the UN. Please save me, okay? I interviewed him once. He looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he makes about as much sense, okay? So this is what they're doing. So this is, I know, when you take it home tonight and you think of, we could all have free university like Iraq did because the oil money went to the people in Iraq. We could have free university. We don't have to pay taxes. One example, in Alaska, they don't pay taxes. And in '98, everybody got a check for $3,000. We could do that in every state and province, and that form of dividend back to the people is called social credit. But they made social credit sound really bad when it came out. They made it sound like it was some kind of communism. Douglas almost cried when he heard they turned it into a party. But that's social credit. And Jackson did that in the United States. The only year the United States had a surplus was under Jackson. He took the money out of the Fed bank, the big central bank, and put it all into the state banks. That was the only year the U.S. ever had a surplus. And he said to them, here's the money, do what you need to do in your state. So he was practicing social credit. So Jackson was the only one who actually, they hated him. He was in for 2 terms. People tried to get him back for a 3rd term. Bankers hated him. They tried to influence him. He couldn't be bought. He couldn't be sold. They called him Old Hickory because hickory is the hardest wood in the world. You can't bend it. You can't break it. They called him Old Hickory because he said to the bankers, you vipers, I will rout you out, you nest of vipers. And he did. Then when he left and went home, they said the bankers came out. They're like cockroaches. They'll hide in the woodwork, and as soon as, a good president is gone, like Kennedy, whatever, they come out again. That's what they do. They never give up. They are parasites. So they are feeding, and the governments are in with them. So if you think, because you do a protest about, the Line 9 or the horrible oil over in Alberta, you can do protests till you're blue in the face. But why is the government going to stand with you when they are in on this? They're investing in these very corporations. Try and talk to one of your politicians to see if they know about this, okay? Because that is why you can't get anything done, and why they never talk about money, never talk about going back to the bank. Never. They will talk to you about trivia. They will talk to you about effects, but never causes. Never. They will never discuss a cause. You're not going to get that out of them. They're not. They're dishonest. So some people are going to the voting stands this time and they're registering, I'm declining to vote. And they're telling people why. You can do that. You can go right up to the table and say, I'm not voting and I want this recorded why I'm not. And they have to do it. So I'm telling you, nothing will get done until there's a huge groundswell of people that are really sick and fed up of being used, and then told when you're older, like next week, I will be discussing, doing a lecture that they actually, Daniel put it on the net a month later, it was blacked out the whole 2 hours, about how the healthcare is using euthanasia. And I did an article on it once years ago, and the article was entitled, We Are Dying to Pay the Debt. The nursing homes, the hospitals, they're all told the same lie. Oh, we can't afford. Doesn't matter what you have. If you can rent the bed for maybe 2 months, 3 months, I don't know what their limit is now. You rent the bed, and either you get better or you're going under, okay? They have a time limit. And you might have built your country, you might have raised wonderful kids, you might have done good volunteer work. It all comes down to what these primordial slime dictate to the government. And they follow those rules. And it doesn't matter how many of us die. As long as no one points a finger, it's done in a subtle way. It's, oh, too bad for her, blah, blah. I've seen friends in those places. I've seen what happens. And next week I'll be doing that lecture. But it all has to do with this again. That's all they do is tell people you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't afford this. And the debt. And do you think anyone ever asks, I'm going to end with this because I feel like George Carlin today. Like, I am so disappointed. Please, the next time you hear about the debt, ask them the question, Would you please tell me to whom I'm paying the debt? I want to know. And would you please tell me about all the billions my government is hiding on me so that they can take more from me? I want to know. Can we do that? I don't think they'll cart you off right away, you know. They might come to your door maybe a few days later. But I think the more of us who ask that question, the better off we're going to be. Just remember this. It's your money. It's your money. And you say to them, well, we'll let you make these billions, but I want my share. Do you hear me? You've got that many billions? I want everyone in this town, if it's a town government, I want you to tell me how many billions we made this year, and I want it divided up evenly among everybody in my town. And that's the only way I'm going to let you make this kind of money. We want our dividends. You owe us our dividends. You used our money, and you're going to give us dividends. End of lecture. Okay.